Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. This morning I decided to bring over a couple of instruments. They're not rare, but most people don't have them. So I decided to bring over one Indian flute and another flute as well. So let's take a look at the Indian flute first. You may have a little trouble seeing it, but I hope not. It is made of bamboo. And you have to remember about a bamboo instrument. They're usually made fairly cheaply for people like myself who collect, or for tourists to bring back. And this is made in the country of India. There are groups of Indians that make wonderful Indian flutes in the United States, the American Indians, but this comes from India itself. And it's meant to imitate or mimic a regular recorder type instrument because it's just got the basic tube. In the back of it, there's absolutely nothing. There's no place to put your thumb. There's no tone hole in the back. But if you notice toward the front, the tone holes are really quite large. And they're all about the same size. Now, most recorders, or good recorders, would have them so that the holes of the recorder for the tone holes are different sizes in order to accommodate the size of your fingers. But this isn't. And it's all hand-painted and hand-glazed. Yeah, that's very good. Take a look at those tone holes. They're amazingly similar. I'm dropping the instrument down now. And you can see the front of it. The labium is going to be right here. That little square thing is the labium, and this is the mouthpiece. And if I turn it to you this way, I think you can see, I can see it from here, the place where you blow into, yeah, that's really good. The place where you can blow into, and it's a fairly good size. And that becomes the mouthpiece. If you turn it in the back, you're going to see this letter C. Now, what does that mean? I'm kind of guessing because I don't know for sure, but I think it stands for the key of C, and the instrument does play in the key of C. The design is all kind of hand-painted. It's been glazed. You can see the shape of the mouthpiece. It's like a true Fipple mouthpiece. There would be a block in it, and even though you can't see it too well, I can kind of trace with my finger where that block is. Because you can see, if you look carefully, a little line. That block becomes a part of the mouthpiece. This one plays fairly well. If you look in the front, if I can get this so you can see, whoops, there we go. You can see, well, there's kind of like a mark down here, but look at the tone holes. The tone holes are about the same size. There is that design, there's a design on the bottom. I'll hold it up, and it's kind of painted red, and that little black squirrely design around the bottom of that. And on the top you have the same kind of design, no red. And it looks like there's an animal kind of on it. That looks like an animal to me, but maybe not. My vision's not that good. It might be a bunch of trees. Let me take a better look. It does look like an animal to me, though I can see like what looks like a little head and a little face. But it may have all kinds of cultural meaning to the Indians who made it. There's definitely a tree there. So there it is. Now I'm going to play it just a little bit so you get a chance to see these instruments like these. They split really well. You have to keep them in room temperature. I don't play them a lot. I only play them some. And the way I got this was I did a seminar on music. And that's what they provided for the instruments, for the music. So I kind of liked it because they gave me a whole bunch of them. When it was over with, people didn't take them with them, and so I took several of them. But this is it. Now the recorder fingering for a D would be this. But it doesn't work. So if I use the flute fingering, that's what I was fooling around with. If I do the flute fingering for the D, places it at about the B because of the fact that it's a little flat, and that's as high as it's going to go. So this actually does play pretty well. It's nothing that I would want to write home about, but I could do a simple solo on it, and I might try at some point to do that just to test it out and see how it does. So that's the Indian flute. The other one that I brought is a Moroccan flute. Now, this is not rare either. It's actually in better shape than the other one is. This Moroccan flute is known as an end-blown flute, and it looks like there's no mouthpiece. It just lays flat on the top, but the end piece, or the top, flat top, becomes a mouthpiece. You can see the place where you blow in, and you can see around the edging there's that little curve, and in that there's a little piece of wood. I mean, it all lies flat, but you can see that there's a demarcation between that little area of flute here, or flat. It's just real flat. That would become the block. This would become the mouthpiece, and the labium is in the back of the instrument. You don't see it in the front. If I turn it around to the back, there's the labium. Now, the trick of playing this is this. You have to get your mouth and your lips between what the labium is and the mouthpiece, which is right above it, right here. That little space and around the corner from the top of the labium, you have to cover your mouth over that little place on top. That becomes where you blow in, and then not cover the labium below. So your mouth could only extend from here to here, and so therefore it's very tricky to play. I'm just going to play a few notes on it. I'd play a note just so you can see what it sounds like. It has kind of a nice tone, and if I were to play a song on it, you see, I would have the tone holes in the front, which are really quite spaced. I mean, there's quite a bit of space between it, and then I'd have to put my mouth here, and as long as I don't cover my mouth over the labium and I have the mouth over the mouthpiece on top, I can make a tone. Well, it's odd to play it that way because it looks like the labium is backwards. The mouthpiece is laying on top. There's no fipple mouthpiece, but when you think of the design of it, it very much is like a recorder. You blow into it, you have the labium, you have the block, but it's all redesigned differently, and yet it does have a good tone. Now, it's all hand-painted, and it's glazed to protect it, and it's actually a very attractive instrument when you stop to think of it. It really is quite attractive. And on the bottom of it, there's just this little tiny hole for the air. Usually the recorders and other instruments, the hole is a little larger. So there it is. This is a Moroccan instrument, and it's very nice. It was given to me at a music center where I used to teach. I'm going to turn it around just to see, so you can see the design of it from here on up. You can see whoops, it's hard to keep it straight. All hand etched, and I would imagine that is symbolic for the culture that the instrument was made in. And then down, if you look toward the middle section, it's all kind of colorized. It's an attractive instrument. It's a nice instrument. And the lady who gave it to me ran a music center. In fact, I taught it. There was a fine arts center, and I taught at it. And she says, I'll never use them. I can't make them play. I'd like a dime for every time someone gave me an instrument and said, you can have it. I can't make it play, because I can usually make it play, but you have to kind of tweak it to do that. Here again, the tone holes are about the same all the way down in terms of size. Modern day instruments try to accommodate the size of your fingers, so they change the size of the holes. So that is the two instruments which I wanted you to see. Next time I'll have another two. All right, now what I want to do now is I want to go into a section on timing. People have talked to me that they have difficulty in timing, so I want to go over this morning, and then after that we can play some music if there's time, as to what notes are, how are notes created, and how do you time them, and what does it mean. So I'm going to use these charts that I have here, if we can get a good view of them. Good, thank you. Here's a note. It's a 16th note, but here's a note. And it has a note body. The round part of the note is called the note body. And then you have a single line sticking up or down, that's called the stem. And then you sometimes, but not always, have little lines. Those are called flags. And so when I refer to a note, I'll talk about the body, the stem, and the flags. That's what notes are anyway. That's what they are. But we start off with a whole note. A whole note is just a plain circle. It's not colored in. There's no stems. There's no flags. It's just the note body, which is by itself just a circle. And it will be the only note in a measure. And the reason for that is if you have something like 3/4 time, there are 3 beats to the measure. This is worth whatever the time signature says the music has as its time. If it was for 4/4 time, 4 beats to a measure, this would be worth 4 beats, and many times that's the case. If it's 2 beats to a measure, this would be worth just 2 beats. Whatever the value of the measure is in terms of time, and that'll be shown you by the time signature, which we'll get into, this is it, the whole thing. So you're going to find, for the most part, I mean, I can think of exceptions, but I don't want to do exceptions. I just want to do main information. This is going to be the only note in a measure. It's a whole note, not colored in, no stems, no flags, and it's worth whatever the time signature says the music is worth in terms of time per measure. Now, if you were to split that in half, you'd have 2 half notes. The half notes are always clear and round, and here again, there is a stem. 1 stem, no flags. It takes 2 of these to equal 1 of that. So you're thinking about splitting things in half, subdivision, and you're really thinking mathematics. Musical notes are really mathematical notes when you stop to think of it. So here's your body. I've got 2 of them. And here is your line up. Those are the stems. Those are half notes. 2 half notes equal 1 whole note. And it can be drawn in different ways. You can draw them with the stems down or with the stems up. It just depends upon where in the music. If you have a line of music and you're writing the notes on the top of the staff, then you're going to have the stems down. If you're going to write the music so that the notes are toward the bottom end of the staff, then the notes that will be the stems up. Now, if you were to split the half notes, what you get is quarter notes. It takes 2 quarters to make a half. It takes 4 quarters to make a whole. So just think in terms of fractions. Now, from here on in, including the quarter notes, all the notes are going to be colored in, usually black, because notes and music is usually black ink printed on white paper. So you have your, they look exactly like the half notes, but they're colored in. You have the body, and then you have the stems. I have 2 stems up. I have 2 stems down, but they're quarter notes. And the note body is colored in, and so 2 make a half note, 4 make a whole note. And you would count them each 1 beat. Supposing that this is 4/4 time, this is worth 4 beats. This is worth 2 beats, and you have 2 of them, which is worth 4 beats. And this is 1 beat each, but 2 of them is going to be the same as 1 half note, and 4 of them is going to be the same as a whole note. Think of subdividing. I have a way of showing this, and I'll kind of show it to you today as well. And so this is a part of it. Now I need to go on from here. If you were to split those quarter notes in half, you would get eighth notes. Eighth notes are colored in. There's the note body. They have a stem, and they have one flag. The eighth note will always have one flag. There are different ways of drawing it. The flag can be, the stem can be down with the flag to one side. The stem can be up with the flag out like this. Or if you have several together, you can draw them together and you can put a line between them, and that's considered to be one flag for both of them. This is one flag for both of them. And so that's the eighth note. Now, eighth notes are a quarter note split in half, and so therefore you would count it 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Where you count the whole note 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say the music is in 4/4 time, and then the half note is 1, 2, 1, 2. The quarter notes 1, 2, 3, 4, and the eighth notes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you see, it's a quarter note split. Now sometimes you will get an eighth note that's dotted. Right here I have an eighth note that's dotted. What does that dot mean? Well, a dot means that the note is worth half as much as what it originally was worth. So let's say if we were doing a quarter note, then you add an extra dot to it, then that makes an extra eighth attached to the quarter. So let me flip back for a minute so I can show this to you. It might be clearer. If I put a dot right here, this is now worth 1.5 beats. I don't have a dot there, but if I did, that would be another eighth note attached to this note, so it would be a little bit longer, and you can do notes like that. But the eighth notes are somehow oftentimes dotted, so it makes them just a little bit longer. So let me get back to where I was. You have here a dotted eighth and 16th, dotted eighth and 16th. Here we have the dotted eighth, and that should be, well, I meant to put a 16th there, but I didn't. So what does that mean? Well, if you flip down here, a dotted eighth is equal to 3/16 notes, because if you take an eighth note and you split it in half, it becomes a 16th note. So a dotted eighth would be, you'd have a little 16th in addition. Now, if you want to look at this from a mathematical standpoint, take the eighth note and cut it in half, you get 2/16. Add a dot to it, you have another 16th, because half of the eighth note is a 16th. So therefore, you have 1, 2, 3/16. This dotted eighth is worth 3/16 notes if you were to split it in half. So let me just kind of go over that again. Half of an eighth note is a 16th. So you take and you split it, and then you get 3/16. 2/16 will be what the eighth note was worth, but you split it in half, so you have 2/16. You add a dot to it, and that gives you another 16th, because the 16th is half of the eighth, and a dot means you add another half of the value of the note. So you end up with 3/16, and now you add another 16th to that, and you get the dotted eighth plus the 16th right here. The 16th has two flags. So when you have a dotted eighth and 16th, this is the eighth note, and this would be the flag for the eighth note. There's an extra added flag here, and so that becomes a 16th note, dotted eighth and 16th. And when you get through, you end up with 4/16, and 4/16 is equal to a beat. I hope this is clear. If it isn't, email me or something, because I'm perfectly willing to go over that again. And it is a little hard to explain. Here's your 16th note. It has two flags. The eighth note has one flag, but the 16th note has two flags. So it's colored in. It has the note body. It has the stem. it has 2 flags to it. It can be written in different ways. If you have 2 together, either up or down, you can draw lines across. These 2 count for a 16th. 16th is 2 flags for each note because they're connected. You can have them in a series of notes, and here you have the 2nd flag, so you don't have just 1 line going across, you have 2 lines going across. That makes it a 16th. It can be written this way, it can be written down. Here you have 4 notes, and they're all together, so you have 2 lines. That makes it a 16th. So there are other notes as well. You have 32nd notes, which we're not going to be dealing with in here, but let me show them to you. 3 flags. What you did with the 16th, if you take the 16th and you split them in half, you get 32nd notes. It's really fast music, and we would not be doing it in here, but I want to show you what it is. So that's 1/2 of the 16th. If you take the 32nd note and you split that in half, then you have a 64th note with 4 flags. So it gets very complicated, gets very difficult, but that's what I want to show you. I'm not going to deal with that, but just to show you what it is. We do a lot of dance music with 64th notes. Now, I need to watch my time here. Here's my staff. This is the staff, and it's 5 lines, and you count it from the bottom up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and these are the spaces. You count those from the bottom up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's your whole note, the only note in the measure. I didn't put in a time signature, but just to show you the notes themselves. And here are the 8th notes. These are the half notes. This is the treble clef right here, and this is the bass clef. And if you look at this, this is your whole note without a stem, without a flag. A half note, it's clear, it has a stem, no flag. Then you have the 16th note. I just put the 16th in there, and this is a dotted 8th and the 16th. And of course, I didn't put in the quarter note, but most people are so familiar with it that it doesn't make any difference. Okay, so I think what I'll do, I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm going to go on from this next time, and we'll be doing some music next time as well. So I'm going to close it here. Please join me next time.